Welcome, loyal sailors of Germany. Our war has not been going well and we need new trained U-boat crews on the seas as fast as humanly possible. So this U-boat VR course strips away the clutter from what can be seen as a complicated operation, and focuses on the core activities so we can get you on the seas and protect the fatherland in record time. U-boat VR operations with all its analog VR UI interactions can be seen as overwhelming. However, it is really not once you get the basics. So let's start this crash course in U-boat operations. Lesson 1. U-boat layout. First, let's go over the layout of the U-boat. We are on the control tower top deck. The front of the deck has a navigation station for surface cruising. You can steer the ship and send engine speed orders to the engine room. There is also a hatch that lowers you down to the conning tower deck. We will go down later. The back deck of the tower top is the anti-air gun deck. Go down the ladder on the side, and you are at the surface deck. The front surface deck has a deck gun for attacking surface ships and a hatch that drops you down to the front torpedo room. There is not much at the back surface deck. A hatch that drops you down to the kitchen. And there is a crossway to the port when you are docked. Let's go back up to the control tower top front deck. Locomotion-wise, there is a smooth and teleport locomotion options. It is best to use smooth locomotion but use teleport when interacting with ladders and hatches. No crouching option in the game. Go down the hatch to the conning tower deck. This is where the gunner is stationed to use the attack periscope to fire torpedoes. You also have secondary navigation and secondary dive, automated control stations. In other words, you can do most of the basic operations of the U-boat on this deck while playing single-player mode. A lot of the operations are automated in single-player mode. None are in multiplayer mode. It is a team play-oriented mode. Go down the ladder again, and you reach the control center of the U-boat. At the center is the main periscope, and the main navigation map. You also have primary navigation and primary dive, manual and automated, control stations. Heading towards the back of the U-boat and passing the crew quarters and kitchen. Then, we reach the engine room with the diesel engine for surface cruising. While playing single-player modem engine operations are all automated. So, you just need to give orders. At the end of the U-boat, we reach the rear torpedo room with one torpedo tube and the electric engine for underwater cruising. Moving forward and passing the control center, we are in the sensor room. There is a telegraph and hydrophone, basically a sonar machine. Moving forward, we are in the front torpedo room with 4 tubes. Lesson 2, Basic Navigation. This is a navigation control station located in 3 places on the U-boat. The control tower top deck, conning tower deck, and control center. We are currently on the control tower top deck. Now let's fire up the engines. You can use the lever on the left to send commands to the engine room. Single player V, multiplayer alert. In single player mode, this engineer in the engine room runs the engines according to your commands. In multiplayer mode, a member of your team has to operate the engines manually. We will look at this later. Fire up the engines to leave port. In front, there is the steering wheel. On the left of it, there is the rudder angle indicator, and below is the navigation mode knob. Manual and auto. Let's go to manual steering first. Above the steering wheel is the course indicator, which looks like a circle inside a circle. The outside circle indicates the compass directions while the inside circle displays the angle relative to the U-boat. The outside circle is the one that rotates as the result of steering. We are currently on the course of bleep bleep degrees. Let us head due north. 0 degrees. Slowly turn the steering wheel until you are heading in the bleep bleep degrees direction. Then reset the steering wheel. Now auto steering. Turn the knob to auto. Now the steering wheel controls the degrees direction number you want to go. Let us go to a random course of bleep bleep degrees. Slowly turn the steering wheel until you get that degrees number above the navigation mode knob. Then reset the steering wheel. And the U-boat will automatically keep heading in that direction. The rudder angle indicator displays the current status of the ship's rudder. Lesson 3, Basic Diving. If the U-boat just sailed on the sea surface, it would not be a submarine. Now let's cover diving into the depths of the sea. Single player V, multiplayer alert. In single player mode, you can give commands that will automatically initiate one of 3 diving operations. Rise to the surface. Go to periscope depth, which is like 10 meters or so. And finally crash dive. Oddly, there is no command for just stop at the current depth. You have to do that manually. In multiplayer mode, all have to be done manually by controlling the ballast tanks and the diving fins. But first, let's look at the automatic commands. Since we are currently on the surface, let's dive to periscope depth. Press the command button here. The U-boat automatically is opening up the ballast tanks to be filled. This will bring us to periscope depth.
Periscope depth!
Now let's crash dive. Press the command button here. The U-boat automatically is controlling the U-boat's front and rear diving fins by turning the red control wheels so that the U-boat will angle downwards. On the diving fins or planes, control angle indicators, diving angles are displayed in red. Rising angles are in black. The front diving fin control is the primary one, while the rear one is more about stability. The U-boat is entering dangerous depths. Let's stop the dive. Even in single-player mode, this has to be done manually. Just use the U-boat's front and rear diving fin control wheels, which are red, to change both the diving fin control angles to 0 degrees. So we have stopped diving. Now we do this in reverse. Rise to periscope depth. Press the command button here. The U-boat automatically is controlling the U-boat's front and rear diving fins so that the U-boat will angle upwards. Now rise to the surface. Press the command button here. The U-boat automatically blows the ballast tanks to rise to the surface. It is not that hard to understand. Lesson 4. Advanced Diving. Let's do the whole thing manually like you would do in multiplayer mode. Since we are current on the surface, let's dive to periscope depth. Manually turn these valve wheels to open up the ballast tanks to be filled. Front or rear ballast tank wheels, either one will do. We are going down to periscope depth, which is like 10 meters or so. Once there, the U-boat naturally settles down. Now let's dive deeper, say 50 meters or so. Go to the U-boat's diving fins or planes, control wheels, and turn them so that the U-boat's front and rear diving fins will angle downwards. On the diving fins or planes, control angle indicators, diving angles are displayed in red. Rising angles are in black. The front diving fin control is the primary one, while the rear one is more about stability. Both control wheels need to be turned in the opposite direction for the same direction of angle. Reaching 50 meters, let's stop the dive. Just use the U-boat's front and rear diving fin control wheels, which are red, to change both the diving fin control angles to 0 degrees. So we have stopped diving. And everything is fine. Back up to periscope depth. Use the U-boat's front and rear diving fin control wheels to change both the diving fin control angles so that the U-boat will angle upwards. Rising angles are in black. We are rising. The rising will stop when we reach periscope depth. Change both the diving fin control angles to 0 degrees again. If you want to go to the surface, you need to blow the ballast tanks so that they are empty of water. Turn the ballast tank blow wheel for this to happen. There is a separate wheel for this action. And we are safely back on the surface. Single player v. Multiplayer alert. Once again, in single-player mode, most of the diving operations except for stopping and settling at a depth are automated. In multiplayer mode, all have to be done manually by controlling the ballast tanks and the diving fins. Lesson 5. Manual Engineering. We are currently in engineering. Single-player v. Multiplayer alert. In single-player mode, this engineer in the engine room runs the engines according to your commands. So, just use the engine command lever and all is taken care of. In multiplayer mode, a member of your team has to operate the engines manually. Using the engine command lever only displays that command to the engineer here. Let's do the whole thing manually like you would do in multiplayer mode. In the engine room, you can control the diesel engine, which is used in surface travel. Below periscope depth, you have to change over to the electric engine. The electric engine is located in the rear torpedo room. The diesel engine has 4 controls starting from the left. The engine mode lever, fuel pump lever, coolant pump lever, and the on or off lever. The engine mode lever is quite obvious. Forward, idle, and reverse. The fuel pump lever controls speed. The engine has 4 indicators on the top left. The only one important is the second one from the bottom. It is a heat indicator. Use the coolant pump lever to prevent engine overheating. Keep it in the green. And the on or off lever. Pull for on. Push for off. Easy. Moving to the rear torpedo room to fuel with the electric engine. It is basically the same with only 3 levers starting from the left. The on or off lever, the engine mode lever, and the engine power lever. Quite straightforward. Again, in single-player mode, this is all automated. Lesson 6. Manual torpedo loading. We are currently in the front torpedo room with 4 tubes. Single-player v. Multiplayer alert. In single-player mode, the crew member in the room loads the torpedo automatically. In multiplayer mode, a member of your team has to load the torpedo manually. Let's do the whole thing manually like you would do in multiplayer mode. First, drain water from the torpedo tube using the water pressure control lever. Second, use the locking handle to unlock the torpedo tube. Third, open the torpedo tube with the door handle. Fourth, use the chain to load the torpedo into the torpedo tube. Fifth, close the torpedo tube with the door handle. Sixth, lock the torpedo tube using the locking handle. Finally, use the water pressure control lever to inject water from the torpedo tube. The tube is loaded. The one rear tube is loaded in the same manner too. Again, in single-player mode, this is all automated. Lesson 7. Manual torpedo firing. We are currently in the conning tower with the tactical periscope. On the right of the periscope is the torpedo computer. To target a ship, you need to get the target data with the tactical periscope, and then input that into the torpedo computer. Once this is completed, you are ready to fire.
Ready!
No single-player v multiplayer alert. This part is no difference in either modes. Let us get into the details. Once into the tactical periscope view mode, you can see the navigational compass in front of you. On the right is the torpedo computer. On the left is the tactical map. Once you start rotating the tactical periscope, you notice its degree of view is displayed on the navigational compass as a blue marker. In order to hit a moving target, you have to have its course data. For static targets, you could just point the periscope and input the target's speed as 0. When fired, the torpedo will turn and move to head towards the direction indicated by the periscope. If you were looking at 0 degrees, the torpedo will end up going straight in the direction of 0 degrees. Hitting moving targets is more difficult. You may have noticed this, but the torpedo is not targeting its target. Rather, you are programming the torpedo to go a certain course. When you see a moving target such as a cargo ship, target it using the tactical periscope. Then, press the target calculation button. You have to do this 3 times in total to get a rough course estimation for the target, which is displayed on the top portion of the torpedo computer. Input the target's speed and distance using the 2 handles below. Choose the torpedo's speed settings using the knob on the right. Below are the torpedo tube selection knobs. Once you choose, we are ready for business. The big lever on the left will fire a torpedo. Once again, using the current data, you are programming the torpedo to go a certain course where the computer estimates the target should be. If the target changes course, the process has to be repeated. Lesson 8. Damage control. Whenever the U-boat gets damaged, this is represented in several ways.
50 meters!
First, you have air leaks. To solve this, find the leaking valve and turn the handle. Second, water leaks. Find the hole in the hull and hammer it shut. Then, use the hand pump to vent the water. Third, you have wiring issues with the electrical engine. Open its wiring box and connect the cut wires. Finally, you have equipment shutting off. Turn them on. All are simple but are a race against time and hindered by manpower limitations. Now you have finished the U-boat VR course. Go out to seas with your U-boats and make the fatherland proud.